US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin reached no agreement to end the war in Ukraine at their high-profile summit in Alaska last Friday. While President Trump had hoped to seal a deal for an immediate ceasefire, he did acknowledge that the two leaders fell short, at least for now. Instead, the American president seems to be moving closer to the Russian position, which is no ceasefire, but an overall peace agreement which settles the Ukraine war once and for all.
I believe we had a very productive meeting. There were many points that we agreed on, most of them I would say, a couple of big ones that we haven't quite gotten there, but we've made some headway. So there's no deal until there's a deal.
Let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards.
So what are these conditions under which there could likely be a peace agreement? Trump did say that any agreement will have to necessarily involve Ukraine giving up some of its territory in the east, which is also known as the Donbas region. Trump has also said that Ukraine must give up its dreams of re-annexing Crimea, which is in the south. This is the same area that was annexed by Russia in 2014, and this was the place where the former Soviet Union used to station its Baltic Sea fleet. But the most damaging would be Ukraine having to explicitly be barred from joining NATO or any other Western military alliance. Currently, Russia occupies about 20% of Ukrainian territory, mainly in the east, which is in the Donbas region. Ukraine will have to give up nearly all of it, including those places in the Donbas which it currently controls. So the net effect of the Alaska summit between Trump and Putin was Trump giving Putin a free pass to continue his war against Ukraine indefinitely without any further penalty. What this also entails is that there will be pending, time-consuming negotiations for a much more sweeping peace deal that will only work in Russia's favor. Russia fears that any immediate ceasefire will actually help Ukraine.
Как вы хорошо знаете, понимаете, одним из центральных вопросов стала ситуация вокруг Украины. Мы видим стремление администрации США и лично президента Трампа содействовать разрешению украинского конфликта. Его желание вникнуть в суть и понять его истоки. Я не раз говорил, что для России события на Украине связаны с фундаментальными угрозами нашей национальной безопасности. Более того, мы всегда считали и считаем украинский народ, я говорил об этом неоднократно, братским, как это ни странно прозвучит в сегодняшних условиях. У нас одни корни, и все происходящее для нас – это трагедия и тяжелая боль.
The American president rolled out a literal red carpet and even applauded as he welcomed Putin. Putin is under American sanctions. He also faces an international arrest warrant for war crimes. The two leaders laughed and spoke warmly with each other. Trump even invited Putin to ride with him in his armored presidential limousine, the Beast. The meeting was a major diplomatic gamble by Trump, unlike anything that his predecessors had done, and it was a total victory for Putin, who's not been welcome anywhere in the West for years now. Putin has now been effectively liberated from the diplomatic isolation that he'd been consigned to for the past 3 years since the start of the war. The Russian leader made no public commitment to stop his assault on Ukraine, and yet he was treated as a valued friend by President Trump. The images emerging from Alaska were remarkable in the history of US-Russia summits. Putin has not been to the United States outside of UN meetings since 2007. Since 2022, since the beginning of this war, he's been under American sanctions, and he was invited to a military base in Alaska that is very much on the front lines of defending America. This is the same American territory which the US had bought from Russia back in the 19th century at a price of $7 million US. And on Friday, Putin was being feted in Alaska. Flying overhead Putin as he arrived there was a B-2 stealth bomber that is key to America's nuclear deterrence. It was also a show of American power to the visiting head of state. But then, by the time the meeting finished after 3 long hours, the dynamics had completely changed. After what was supposed to be an initial one-on-one meeting, it went on to an extended 3-on-3 meeting, which went on for a good 3 hours. From the American side, Trump was joined by Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. On the Russian side, their combative foreign minister Sergei Lavrov was part of the extended talks. In the end, Putin walked away without conceding much, and he was elevated much higher up in stature. The Russian president even suggested that Trump visit him in the Russian capital next time.
Mr. President, I'd like to thank you very much, and we'll speak to you very soon and probably see you again very soon. Thank you very much, Vladimir.
Next time in Moscow.
Oh, that's an interesting one. No, I'll get a little heat on that one, but I could see it possibly happening. Thank you very much, Vladimir. And thank you all. Thank you.
And now the fallout or the damage control begins. An array of European leaders, presidents and prime ministers are flying into Washington for the meeting Monday with President Trump and President Zelensky of Ukraine to make sure that a viable, defendable Ukraine survives this. President Trump has made an instant U-turn on the critical issue of obtaining a ceasefire before Ukraine starts negotiating over land or security guarantees, and all of this has left Europe in a completely shaken state of mind. By most accounts, the Europeans want to ensure that Trump has not pivoted too close to the Russian side. They also don't want him to try and strong-arm Zelensky into a deal that will ultimately lead to the disintegration of Ukraine. Trump did offer support for US security assurances for Ukraine after the war. That's a clear shift from his earlier position that Europe should burden all the cost of protecting Ukraine. Although the specifics of the security guarantee and what would be an American backstop, that's not been outlined. The foremost concern for Europeans was to avoid another scene like what happened in February when Zelensky met with Trump in front of television cameras at the White House. At that meeting, Trump berated Zelensky, saying, "You don't have the cards," essentially telling a weak foreign power to bend to the demands of a much bigger power. And the president continued to do that on Friday as well after meeting with Putin.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Trump has already adopted many of Putin's talking points. He's discarded few of the West's positions as well. Even before the face-to-face meeting with Putin, Trump assured the Russian leader that Ukraine's application to join NATO would be put in the deep freezer. He also hinted that Ukraine invited the invasion by applying to be part of NATO and to be part of the European Union. Trump and European allies had earlier agreed that a ceasefire must precede any kind of peace agreement or peace accord, but he abandoned that view after meeting Putin. That, together with giving up territory, seems to be the final nail in Ukraine's war. The question is, can Zelensky and Europe continue to fight this war without American support?